Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded for Monday, July 12th, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. So in today's episode, we only have 2 items for this week. That's approval of Rylaze for certain types of ALL and LBL, and the FDA issuing a new EUA for Actemra for treatment of COVID-19. As always, feel free to skip around. I'm going to include times in the show notes so you get the drugs that interest you. First up this week, the FDA approved asparaginase Erwinia chrysanthemi, which goes by brand name Rylaze, as a component of a chemotherapy regimen to treat acute lymphoblastic leukemia and lymphoblastic lymphoma in adult and pediatric patients who are allergic to the E. coli-derived asparaginase products used commonly for treatment. The only other FDA-approved drug for such patients with allergic reactions has been in global shortage for years. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia occurs in approximately 5,700 patients annually, about half of whom are children. It is the most common type of childhood cancer. One component of the chemotherapy regimen is an enzyme called asparaginase that kills cancer cells by depriving them of substances needed to survive. To explain it simply, asparaginase is an enzyme that breaks down asparagine. Unlike normal cells, acute lymphoblastic leukemia cells are unable to make their own asparagine. So, asparaginase stops the cancer cells from dividing and growing. However, an estimated 20% of patients are allergic to the standard E. coli-derived asparaginase and need an alternative their bodies can tolerate. Rylaze's efficacy was evaluated in a study of 102 patients who either had a hypersensitivity to E. coli-derived asparaginases or experienced silent inactivation. The main measurement was whether patients achieved or maintained a certain level of asparaginase activity. The study found that the recommended dosage would provide the target level of asparaginase activity in 94% of patients. The most common side effects of Rylaze include hypersensitivity reactions, pancreatic toxicity, blood clots, hemorrhage, and liver toxicity. The review was conducted under Project Orbis, an initiative of the FDA Oncology Center of Excellence. Project Orbis provides a framework for concurrent submission and review of oncology drugs among international partners. For this review, FDA collaborated with Health Canada, where the application review is still pending. Rylaze received Fast Track and Orphan Drug designations for this indication. Fast Track is a process designed to facilitate the development and expedite the review of drugs to treat serious conditions and fulfill an unmet medical need. Orphan Drug designation provides incentives to assist and encourage drug development for rare diseases. The FDA granted approval of Rylaze to Jazz Pharmaceuticals. And finally this week, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization for the drug tocilizumab, which goes by brand name Actemra, for the treatment of hospitalized adults and pediatric patients 2 years of age and older who are receiving systemic corticosteroids and require supplemental oxygen, non-invasive or invasive mechanical ventilation, or extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Actemra is not authorized for use in outpatients with COVID-19. Actemra is a monoclonal antibody that reduces inflammation by blocking the interleukin-6 receptor. In the case of COVID-19 infection, the immune system can become hyperactive, which may result in worsening of disease. Actemra does not directly target SARS-CoV-2. Actemra is a prescription medication given by IV infusion that is FDA approved for multiple inflammatory diseases, including rheumatoid arthritis. Under the EUA, the FDA is authorizing the emergency use of Actemra for the treatment of certain hospitalized patients with COVID-19. Actemra is not approved as a treatment for COVID-19. In clinical trials of hospitalized patients with COVID-19, Actemra, in addition to the routine care patients receive for treatment of COVID-19, which included corticosteroid therapy, was shown to reduce the risk of death through 28 days of follow-up and decrease the amount of time patients remained hospitalized. The risk of patients being placed on ventilators or death through 28 days of follow-up was also decreased. The issuance of an EUA is different than an FDA approval. In determining whether to issue an EUA, the FDA evaluates the totality of available scientific evidence and carefully balances any known or potential risks with any known or potential benefits of the product for use during the emergency. Based on the FDA's review of the totality of scientific evidence available, the agency has determined that it is reasonable to believe that Actemra may be effective in treating COVID-19 for the authorized population. And when used to treat COVID-19 for the authorized population, the known and potential benefits of Actemra outweigh the known and potential risks for the drug. There are no adequate, approved, and available alternative treatments to Actemra for the treatment of COVID-19 in hospitalized adults and pediatric patients who are receiving systemic corticosteroids and require supplemental oxygen, non-invasive or invasive mechanical ventilation, or ECMO. The data supporting this EUA for Actemra are based on 4 clinical trials. These included one randomized controlled open-label platform trial known as the Recovery Trial, and then 3 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled Impacta, Covacta, and Remdacta trials. While all 4 clinical trials contribute to the FDA's understanding of Actemra for the treatment of COVID-19, the most important scientific evidence on the potential benefits of Actemra for its authorized use came from the Recovery and the Impacta trials. In the Recovery trial, 4,116 hospitalized patients with severe COVID-19 pneumonia were randomized to receive either Actemra in addition to usual care or usual care alone. The primary endpoint evaluated death through 28 days of follow-up, and the results of the primary analysis were statistically significant. The probabilities of death by day 28 were estimated to be 30.7% for patients receiving Actemra and 34.9% for patients receiving usual care alone. The median time to hospital discharge was 19 days for patients receiving Actemra and more than 28 days for patients receiving usual care. In the Impacta trial, 389 hospitalized patients with COVID-19 pneumonia were randomized to receive Actemra or placebo. The primary endpoint evaluated the need for mechanical ventilation or death through 28 days of follow-up. For patients receiving Actemra, there was an observed reduction in progression to mechanical ventilation or death compared to patients who received placebo, with the primary analysis results being statistically significant. The proportion of patients who required mechanical ventilation or died by day 28 was estimated to be 12% for patients receiving Actemra and 19.3% for patients receiving placebo. Under the EUA, fact sheets that provide important information about using Actemra in treating COVID-19 as authorized must be made available to healthcare providers and to patients, parents, and caregivers. These fact sheets include dosing instructions, potential side effects, and drug interactions. Common side effects of Actemra observed in the COVID-19 trials include constipation, anxiety, diarrhea, insomnia, hypertension, and nausea. The EUA was issued to Genentech Incorporated. And that's all I have for right now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you heard today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.